Good start. Hey guys, welcome back to a page in the chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today we are going through my February TBR. I did miss the January TBR and the December wrap-up. It's been a little while since I've been on top of things enough. I've also just been mood reading like crazy lately, and I was kind of enjoying the lack of structure for a little bit, but I am very ready to get back into the flow of having a TBR. But I've kept it quite light and quite vague so that I do have that opportunity to mood read if I would like to, if I decide that I'm no longer like a TBR, if I just want to change the way that I do TBRs again, basically. So I used to be very strict about TBRs, and then I became a little bit like, it's just a guideline, and now I don't know what I am, but we will find out at the end of February if I stick to this TBR, if I liked having that structure, or if I'm so used to mood reading again that it just wasn't for me. But I will say, by not having a TBR, I think I slipped into some old habits, but I'm currently in the middle of 3 books, and that is kind of stressing me out, and meaning that I was so stressed out by all of the books that I had to read that I just didn't pick any of them up. So I think having a TBR might help me with that just a little bit. So if you guys like seeing monthly TBRs and monthly wrap-ups, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload a TBR and a wrap-up every single month, and they are all listed in playlists entitled, very creatively, TBRs and wrap-ups, if you would like to go and watch some of the old ones. Also, do feel free to check me out on Instagram and Twitter at Page in Chapter, where you can see what I'm reading and how I'm reviewing it in real time, so you don't have to wait monthly for these videos if you don't want to. And now let's get on into all of the books that I would like to read in February. So I have 3 books that I am rolling over from January that I haven't finished yet. So these next 3 are books that I'm kind of halfway through or partway through that I think I will be able to finish in the month of February, which means that this TBR is smaller than the amount of books on it suggests, because 3 books were started last month. So the first book is my audiobook listen at the moment, which is Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. This is a smutty Hades and Persephone retelling, because of course it is, where Persephone is basically sold into a marriage with Zeus, and so to try and avoid having to marry Zeus, because all of Zeus's wives end up dead in this story, she flees to the underworld and basically begs Hades to enter into a sexual relationship with her so that Zeus will no longer want her. It's a fun read. I don't think it is topping A Touch of Darkness for me in terms of the Hades and Persephone theme, but I do like Katie Roberts' writing style. I can see why she's popular. I'm interested in checking out some more of her books, and this is just a nice, easy, chilled listen for when I'm like driving or walking to the train station of a morning. This is just a nice little one to have on hand, but I do find that I get through audiobooks very slowly, which is why it's taking me probably 3 times as long as it would normally take me to read a book like this, because I just don't gravitate towards listening to books. It is not my favourite way of absorbing a book, but I like having that option for when I'm doing things that I can't read at the same time as normally. So then the next book I would like to tell you about is also another one of my commute books, and that is The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon, which is book 2 in the Bone Season series. I am 314 pages into this book. This is the side that I have read, and this has definitely slowed down the pace from the first book, which is why it's not gripping me quite as much as the first one did. So the first one was also my commute book, and by commute book I mean a book that I read when I'm on the tube, but that one I got so gripped by it that I did end up reading it when I was home too. I just really wanted to know what happened. This book doesn't have that as much as the first one did. So the Bone Season series is a series that follows a futuristic society that is very obviously influenced by history, so it's kind of strange because it's like a mix of like medieval and futuristic sci-fi at the same time, but it's done very, very cleverly. And in this futuristic society, clairvoyance is prevalent, but it is very much banned, and if you're found to have clairvoyance then you are going to get murdered. And this follows our main character Paige. You can tell she's going to be a good character already, and she has clairvoyance, and she is part of this secret society of like bands of clairvoyant like con artists. It's difficult to explain. And then she gets captured and we follow her as she discovers what actually happens to clairvoyants that become captured. Very, very gripping, very, very interesting, and the world building is beautiful. I immediately went out and picked up the second book. Like the minute I finished the first one, I went and picked up the second one, and that rarely happens to me with fantasy books these days, so you know it's good. But in this one, things start to slow down a bit, which wasn't unexpected given this is supposed to be a 6-book series, I think, so the pace was not going to stay where it was at. But I am still enjoying this. I do think that this is a very good sequel, and it doesn't have that like second book syndrome that I tend to find second books have, where I hate them. It's just taking me a little longer to get through this one because I am only reading it on the train at the moment. And so then the third book that I am rolling over is my at-home reading romance pick, so that when I'm done reading the big heavy fantasy on the train, I can come home and relax. And you will not be surprised to find that it is Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This book just came out. I'm sure you are seeing it all over BookTube and Bookstagram at the moment. If you are a romance reader, you are reading this trilogy. Lauren Asher is one of my favourite romance writers. I have an entire shelf dedicated to her. You can't see it because it's not in frame, but I've got the entire Dirty Air series and then now the entire Dreamland Billionaire series. So this trilogy follows 3 separate brothers where their grandfather is this Walt Disney type figure, and when he passes away he leaves each brother a task that they have to complete in order to receive their inheritance and their shares in this Disney type of company. So the first book follows Rowan, and he has to go to Dreamland, which is essentially Disneyland, to take it over and run it for a short period of time, and then he will receive his inheritance and can be done with the place. The second book follows Declan, and he is tasked with having to get married and have a child in order to receive his inheritance. And in this book we follow Callahan, who has to go back to the summer lake house where they spent every summer growing up and live there for another summer whilst he tries to sell the place. However, when he gets to this summer lake house, he finds that his grandfather has already sold the house to his ex-love, whose heart he broke and then abandoned there. So this is one hefty romance book. It also does deal with some triggering topics like addictions. This definitely doesn't feel like it's going to be a light-hearted romance. It feels like Callahan really has a lot of dark things happening to him and has dragged a lot of people into his own crap that's going on, and it's really going to be a story about him coming to terms with that and coming to terms with his addictions. And I think this story is going to have a lot of heart to it, but I do think that it's not going to be the light-hearted romance I'm used to from Lauren Asher, but I'm kind of okay with it because I very much like Callahan already. I'm like invested in them, and I'm only 50 pages in, but yeah, Callahan and Alana might be my favourite pairing of this entire series right now, so we will see, but I'm excited to read this one. And so then we are getting into the section of this TBR that are not rollovers, and I currently only have 3 books on this TBR. I do think that I can read more than 3 books with finishing the other 3. I do think that I would be able to read more than 6 books in February, but I am going on holiday to New York, so that's not really like a reading holiday, but I do have like the 8-hour flights that I might read on, but I also might do uni work on, and then I might buy books there that I immediately want to read because I'm going to get to go to Barnes & Noble for the first time. So I don't know how this month is gonna go reading wise, and I don't want to be too strict on the TBR, so we're gonna allow for some flexibility in swapping out of books if I so wish. And so the first book is a romance that I have had on my physical TBR since I first went to like go shopping in London and was just looking for some physical copies of romance books that I could pick up and kind of try. When I realised, okay, like romance is what I need to be reading, I then realised that I needed a lot more romance books in order for that to be my main genre that I read. So I went and picked this book up because it did sound good, but then I just never really got around to actually reading it, and I want to make a big effort this year to try and get some of my physical TBR books down. I'm actually tracking it this year, which I've never tracked before. So it's just a good time to read this one, and that is A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. This says as seen on TikTok, but I have never once seen this book on TikTok. So this is like a also slightly academic setting. This follows two dentistry students, and Dan is kind of head over heels smitten with Harper, but when she expresses that she doesn't really have feelings for him, they set out to be just friends, and naturally that's probably going to go horribly wrong for them. But mostly I'm just interested to see another romance set against the backdrop of like studying. This isn't really academia in the way that Ali Hazelwood's books are, but these are still like students, and so I'm interested to see how that all plays out in that kind of setting. This is a nice like short read. It looks like it's going to be a short fluffy romance book, and it's just an easy one to get off the physical TBR, really, isn't it? I am excited about this one. King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett Sinclair. Scarlett Sinclair is the author of the A Touch of Darkness series, which is the other Hades and Persephone smutty romance book that I mentioned to you. This one is Adrian and Isolde, and this is a marriage of convenience, fake dating-y kind of trope with a fantasy setting. I do find that Scarlett Sinclair's fantasy elements in her romance books can be a little bit weak, but I'm interested to see if that was just the Hades and Persephone book, because it felt more contemporary and then in the second book took a bit of a sharp turn towards fantasy. Maybe this one won't have those issues because it will have just been written as a fantasy from the get-go. But I picked this up because I wanted to do a marriage of convenience like reading blog thing. I can still do that, but I just want to read this book now. I ended up reading some of the other books that I had purchased for this video anyway, so I'm just going to read this one. I can still talk about it in that video if I decide to film it, and there are plenty of marriage of convenience tropes out there. I will get back to you on whether this is a good marriage of convenience trope, but I'm really excited about it because fake dating and marriage of convenience are in my mind under the same umbrella, and they are my favourite romance trope. I don't know what it is about it. There's both tropes that are a little bit silly and unbelievable to read, but there's just some kind of spice about them that makes me very excited about the actual romance and the dynamic between the characters. I think it's the added touch of like, I'm falling for you and I think you're falling for me too, but I don't know because maybe we're just pretending. Like, it's that added that I love. And so then the final book on my TBR is one that has been on my physical TBR for a very long time. I am hesitant to pick it up because it is the first book in a series, and I don't know if it is worth me reducing my physical TBR by reading this one but then having to add 2 more books on it because I've started a series. But that is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahoran. Every time I read the blurb of this book, I am desperate to read it, but it's just the fact that it is a series that really puts me off. So this is also kind of like a marriage of convenience-y trope, but it's slightly more fantasy-esque because the blurb of this book is, a witch and a witch hunter thrust into holy matrimony. There was only one way such a story could end, a stake and a match. Like, it just sounds so good and so tense, and I really think that I'm going to love this story. But the size of the book, the fantasy elements, the fact that it's a series have all kind of come together to mean that I don't start this book. But I think this month could do it. But again, we will see. This will probably be the last book that I reach for, so it does entirely depend on how my reading the rest of the month goes. But I'm putting it on the TBR as an option to kind of tell my brain, okay, we're gonna start thinking about making an effort to read this book now. So I'm very excited about it. This feels like a book that like 13-year-old me would go feral for, and I like to please my inner teenager or tweenager. So that's an option. And so here are the books that I would like to read in February. I have very high hopes for this month. I think all of these books are going to be fun little reads, even if I'm not like obsessed with them or they're my favourite books ever. I don't think I will have any trouble finishing them. I don't think any of these books are going to be a DNF. I'm not taking many risks this month. I do not want to risk a reading slump this early in the year. I'm on a really good kind of wave of reading at the moment, and I don't want to do anything to risk that right now, so we're not taking any risks. We're sticking with the romances, the tropes that I love. The only really fantasy ones thrown in there are my commute book, which is fine because I find it easy to read fantasy on the train, and then Serpent and Dove is probably, it's towing that line because it's a fantasy romance, but I don't think I will have any issues with it. If you have read any of these books, then do please let me know your thoughts down below. Also let me know what is on your February TBR so I can get some inspiration. It is the month of Valentine's Day after all, so the romance recs should be flowing my way. If you like seeing this TBR and you would like to see more TBRs from me and all of my wrap-ups, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below to stay tuned for future content, and also go and check out those playlists if you would like to watch the old ones. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything you are reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future. And I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.